All right, hey, what's up out there, guys? If you're out there, Coach Mac, sorry I missed you guys last week, but we'll be back at it this week again. A little bit different backdrop. I'm out on my back porch. Um, kind of changed some things up in the house. I got a different computer. Actually, have a regular old-fashioned computer in my room, and now I brought the laptop out here because computer that I have in my room doesn't have a webcam. So um, hopefully you guys can see me. Hopefully the lighting is okay. It's about 9 o'clock at night. Beautiful night in Florida on my back porch. But hope everything is okay. Hope you guys are doing all right. Again, sorry I missed you guys last week. And I thought I would, I had somebody comment about making a video about to read and quarters and what the difference was and everything else. And I did a video on that, and immediately it had a bunch of views right away. So obviously everybody's a little bit, I don't know if it's so much confused about quarters and to read, or if it's so much everybody's wants to know more about quarters defense. So I thought we would at least label the chat tonight quarters toolbox, which means talking about all the things in your quarters toolbox, quarters defense. And then for me, a big pet peeve that I mentioned in a video is what quarters is and what quarters actually isn't. And then when you're making adjustments to your quarters defense, making sure that you understand, at least from a terminology standpoint, or um, Willie, my man, how's everything in Georgia, bud? You guys seem to be ahead of the curve a little bit. Um, you know, uh, I think everybody understands kind of the quarters toolbox in a way, but when I talk to people or I get questions about two read or palms defense, whatever you want to call it, and quarters defense, I think a lot of times people think it's kind of synonymous with the same thing, and it's really not. It's two completely different coverages within the rules of the coverage and how you're playing the coverage. But uh, Coach Moses, how are you, sir? But what happens is two reader palms is a part of your quarters toolbox and something that you need to carry for you to be able to make the right adjustments when playing quarters defense as a base. But the two coverages within themselves are really remotely different, with a pretty good amount of different responsibilities of how you're going to handle things. Um, hey Brian, how are you doing, sir? So so I thought we'd talk about tonight, or at least I would try to talk about tonight what quarters coverage is, what it was meant to be, why it was meant to be, what two read coverage is, what it was meant to be, why it was meant to be, 3-by-1 adjustments and what they're meant to be and why they're meant to be, so that people can maybe get a little bit better understanding. Wow, Beatty, that's great. We are not to my knowledge, in Florida, we are not fully back yet. I think we're getting close, but we're not we're not totally back yet. We're not in the weight room yet. We're not practicing yet. We're not doing anything yet. I think we're going to be able to get back soon, but I think it's going to be an adjusted weight room schedule with kids only coming in um, the weight room at certain times, and then maybe if you're going outside, you can have X amount of kids outside. My concern with everybody being back is that everybody wants to come back a little bit too early, and everybody's chomping at the bit to come back. And I think we need to, in order to not prolong this any further, I think we need to um, do the best we can within the social distancing and those standpoints. That I know that a lot of regulations have been lifted in a lot of states and everything else, but I think we need to do the best we can, making sure that the locker room is a very cautious place. The weight room is a very cautious place. People are in and around all the same things, touching the same things. So I'm glad to see that you're back, Beatty, and doing whatever you needed to do in the park. Um, we are not fully back yet, but we're getting close. Yeah, Jack, I'm on my back porch right now, and it's 9:05 at night, and it's probably 82 degrees on my back porch. Strong Island, Coach O'Malley, how you doing, sir? I feel bad for you guys. I talked to Joe Delgaze, my buddy on Long Island, and you guys don't even know if you're going to be back in September, let alone we're talking about Coach Beatty just talked about they just did some workouts at a park, and we think we're getting closer to workouts and things in Florida. But heck, New York, from my friends that I talk to and the people that I know in New York, I don't even know if they're going to go back to school in September. Where are you at, Jack? Oh, Pete, you guys, yeah, God, as much as I love New York and obviously being a Long Island guy and love being from New York, I can only imagine when something like this occurs, how much it just magnifies um, everything with between population and yeah, between so many people and the population and just all the things that you love about New York actually uh, turn turn out to be a detriment during times like this. It's just crazy. We're getting closer. I think everybody's getting closer. The only issue I have with football coaches and um, you know athletics sometimes in general, I think everybody is so uh, bad. The quarantine and the corona and everything else that's going on has everybody going kind of stir crazy, um, and I think it's got a lot of people kind of losing their minds a little bit, and everybody wants to get back to normal and get back to everyday life, and I get that, and I'm with everybody else that's trying to do that, but when you're dealing with what we're dealing with right now, and we really have no idea what we're dealing with, nor whether what we're dealing with is extreme, or have we gone too far? I don't know one way or the other, but obviously there's people out there that know a little bit more than we do, and we feel like we could get back to work today, tomorrow, whatever. But there's people out there that know more than we do, and unfortunately, we're dealing with politics, and anytime you're dealing with politics, there's always going to be an agenda. So it's obviously it's uncharted, but let's get the hell away from Corona and all that nonsense, and let's just talk some ball. So that much rain in Michigan, Jack, that you guys are getting flooded. We haven't had a lot of rain in Florida at all. Actually, we're getting burned out a little bit. I think there'll be college football. Personally, obviously, you're dealing with 50 states across the country, and you can't just say that when one state goes back, other states don't go back. So, that's a little bit of the issue that you're gonna deal with. But I think we'll have college football, whether or not you have fans there or not. I don't know, but we'll see how much people really like college football and football in general. If they have to play with no fans, and that's the way the game um, was meant to be anyway. So if you had to play, the way if you're a coach and you coach football, or if you're a player and you love playing football, you don't play for the people in the stands. You don't coach for the people in the stands. So if they had two teams that were playing a football game and nobody was there, who gives a shit? Sorry, excuse my French, but who cares? That's not why we play anyway. So, the fans make it great. College football and the atmosphere makes it great. NFL football makes it great, but it's one of those deals where if we could get back after this pandemic, if we could get back to playing football, period, in front of no people, it'd be great. It'd be awesome. So I think there's going to be college football, but I can't speak on behalf of anybody else on top of me, politics, legislatures, anybody like that. But I'd have a hard time believing that we're not going to have college football. Wow, that's strange, Jack, in Michigan that people had to evacuate. I don't. Obviously, I know that you've got the Great Lakes and other things there, and high tides could be an issue, or maybe not high tides with lakes, but I realize that flooding can be an issue. But outside of drastic situations, I haven't heard of anything like that. But obviously, you live there, so it just sucks on top of the pandemic that we already have. That you got enough things to worry about, and now you got to worry about flooding and evacuating it. It's just insane. Yeah, Coach Moses. Obviously, every coverage starts with alignment. You got to understand what you're trying to do within quarters coverage, and where the alignment needs to be within each guy. So I think every coverage starts with alignment. You got to be alignment, assignment, and as far as I'm concerned, you got to understand your responsibility in your coverage. You have to align properly to your responsibility in your coverage so that you can execute your assignment. Again, a lot of the videos I do and a lot of things I talk about being in the football business now for 20 years and going on 48 years old and getting older with what I'm doing. And um, that all boils back down to assignment, alignment, making sure that kids understand not only what their assignment is, but how to align to execute that assignment. So every coverage to me, Coach Moses, is going to come down to alignment and making sure you align properly. No, I think you could, Coach Duncan. I think you had better, outside of some changes that you're making based on offenses that you're seeing. Um, I think you can run the same defense year to year, and if you do not run the same defense and you make changes based on your personnel, like personally we did, um, 2 years ago, going on 3 years ago now, we changed from 4-2-5 to 3-3 stack, but we played the same exact coverage principles behind it. And we just changed our run fits slightly to fit our kids a little bit better and to fit our personnel a little bit better. But as far as I don't think you want to be changing the coverage schemes year in and year out. I don't think you want to be changing how you play your base coverages year in and year out. If you do make a change, I think it's something that you want to teach and stick with for a little bit because it takes so long to get taught and to get used to playing the coverages that you need to play and the formation adjustments and emotion adjustments and all that things that I don't think you want to be changing year to year. But we changed 2 years ago from 4-2-5 to 3-3 stack, and the only thing that really changed is how we fit runs within a six-man box. Everything else on the back end stayed the same. Yeah, Jack, I can imagine with all the Great Lakes there, it goes to the lake and then everything floods, and just hope everything gets better for you guys soon. All right, Coach O'Malley. If we start with base option rules, then obviously depending on how they're blocking for us in the 3-3 stack, depending on how they're blocking everything, we would have our dive quarterback rules would be based on how they block it. So if they veer block it and the tackle blocks down inside and veer releases, our end will squeeze the dive and our stack linebacker will play the quarterback. If they base block it like a midline type deal, then our end would play the C gap and our stack linebacker would then fit the B gap. Our nose and our mic fit off each other in the A gap from there. So the blocking scheme for us, as far as our run fits and how we would play um, option or veer stuff, it all depends on how they're blocking it for us in the 3-3. Is James Scoot? Please define what you think is special and is brown, and then I'll get back to you from there. I think we're probably talking about the same thing. Our mixed coverage, I think, is your special in my opinion, and our robber one free one rat is your brown in my opinion. So just let me know exactly what your terminology is. Yeah, Coach Kruger's a great guy. High and tight football is an amazing product. I wish the video that I did had more views. It didn't get enough views because YouTube is an analytic algorithm type deal, and people see the topic of the video and they don't really tune in. But anytime as a head coach or as a football coach, you can get a tool that teaches you ball security and how to get kids to understand how to hold the ball. And I played a skill position my entire life, and I've had the football in my hands my entire life, and I grabbed that football and I could not get it to beep. I had to adjust it 50 different times to get it to beep. So what we know is ball security and what we were taught as ball security and what's actually ball security are two different things. And I think it's an amazing product on the market. And I think everybody out there that's video, if you're listening to this YouTube live chat tonight, or you go to any of my channels or any of my videos or anything I do, if you haven't checked out High and Tight yet as a football coach, I think you need to check it out because I think it's going to be an amazing tool to teach ball security, which directly affects wins and losses. Yeah, Coach McBride, I don't know about our flexibility with what we can do and what we can't do. We still don't even know exactly when we can come back officially, based on my county that I'm in and the state. When we do come back, um, it'll be guidelines according to how your state is handling the coronavirus. For us in general at my school, I think it's going to be the interesting thing I think we're going to have to do is we're going to have to come up with different workout plans. I think we're only going to be able to have maybe 10 to 15 or 20 kids in the weight room at a time, maybe 10 to 15 kids outside running. We may have to break up varsity and JV. I don't want to jump back, me as a head coach personally, being responsible for what we're doing and keeping my AD and principal in mind. I don't want to jump back full bore into what we're doing with 80 kids in a weight room and locker rooms and touching bars and everything else. I want to be safe when we come back and make sure that when we do come back, we don't come back too early. And I know as football coaches, everybody thinks that we need to get back immediately and start practicing and doing everything else. But I think the thing that you got to consider with coronavirus and COVID-19 and all the other nonsense that you want to talk about, football is a sport where there's going to be contact every day. You're going to be touching other people every day. You're going to be in a weight room with 80 kids that are in locker rooms next to each other with shorts and shirts and shoes. And so I think I think you need to be real careful with what you're doing in your return to play protocol. And unfortunately, I think I think football coaches are so embedded on we got to meet, we got to be back, we got to be working, and they all feel like if they're not working, that nothing is going on, and everybody is losing ground. But the only thing I worry about is we come back too soon and we get stuck in this for another couple months. So we'll make sure. I don't know, Coach McBride, what it's going to look like, but it's going to be different. Rocco Tenebruso, you all right, baby? Rocco is cover seven Saban terminology for quarter half. If so, we play quarter half as a base defense. That's how we play everything. Um, if cover seven and what Saban does is quarter half, then yes, that's how we do everything in how we play defense. It's how I learned to play defense, and we still do it to this day. Yeah, Coach Duncan, I was an odd guy. I was a 3-4 guy when I learned how to play, just because when I got a head coaching job, my mentor from college, Joe Delgaze, was a 3-4 reduction guy, and that's how I learned to play. Then we switched to 4-2-5 because it was something that I felt like we needed to do for simplicity. And then I switched to 3-3 stack because of personnel. But I've always carried the same coverages. Ironically, to this day, in 2020, we played quarter half and a lot of the same base coverages on defense the same way we did in 1998 when I started coaching and when I learned from Joe Delgaze at St. John's University in New York. So we still are quarter half, where it's a little bit more involved with how you check defenses to certain things, but it's it's in its roots. We're still a quarter half team, whether we were 3-4 reduction, 4-2-5, or 3-3-5. We're a quarter half team, always will be, and always have been. You got to disguise the corners a little bit, Coach Wallace or Hunter Wallace. You got to disguise your corners with the guys that are playing man. If you're playing quarters to the side, you're playing quarters. The guy that's playing man has got to be able to press bail or press and do some different things with his coverage. It's hard to disguise your safeties within. You can come in. It's hard to disguise your safeties within quarters coverage with the alignment and where they need to play two vertical and the depth they need to play at. I know everybody tries to stem and roll, but I'm a bigger fan of execution as opposed to disguise. When I was younger, I tried to disguise a lot of things, and we worked so much on the disguise of what we were doing that we actually didn't play the coverages right and we didn't run fit right. So I would worry more about the execution than the disguise. Disguise is got to be more with the corners. You can spin like when we're quarter half spinning safeties and spinning the weak side support in your quarter half, whether it's your weak safety or a corner. Um, how you spin them to change who that support player is huge. But to the quarter side, it's kind of tough to disguise what you're doing. But the corner is the guy that can probably help you the most. Yes, your mixed coverage. Do you still play that? Yeah, 3-by-1 mix is our based adjustment. We are man on number one. We are two read on 2 and 3. So we take our palms rules and we adapt them to palms on 2 and 3 with the stack backer or whoever your backer is. And then for us, we're three safety systems. So two safeties play two read on 2 and 3, and the corner plays man on one, and that allows us to play 2 for 1 on the backside. So yes, we still play mixes are what I think would be special in the big time world, the college world is what we call mix. But yes, that's our number one 3-by-1 adjustment. David, I don't know what that means. Ends is corners, corners is ends, 7 box, 7 diamond. Yeah, Saban split field for us. Cover seven is probably Rocco is probably quarter half. I think. Um, I think what we play is Saban's cover seven, but I don't get too involved in terminology and what they call what. We just we play what we play, and we're a quarter half team. If that's cover seven, then great. If it's not, Saban's terminology is a little bit crazy sometimes, and but I think everybody knows it because that's what they study so much. And obviously, he's as good as there is in the business. So I think everybody knows that terminology. But we're a quarter half team, but we don't call it cover seven. Yeah, I guess if you're talking about umbrella D, as far as like maybe four high secondary stuff or five high, and then spinning down and stuff like that. Yeah, I guess it would be. I guess that would be umbrella. But my deal is not. My deal is more the coverage you're actually playing. And while we're talking about quarters coverage, like to me, quarters coverage and cover four, what some people would consider an umbrella cover four coverage with four people, four players playing deep 1/4 of the field. That is not quarters coverage. It is not quarters coverage by rule. It is not quarters coverage by definition. It's playing 1/4 of the field in a zone theory and not a pattern match concept with a guy or a free safety that is becoming a ninth man in the box. That is not quarters defense. So that umbrella cover four, whatever that look is, I know people probably won a lot of games with it, but that is not quarters coverage. If we are really talented, we'll be bend don't break. If we are less talented, we will be aggressive and we will move and stunt and do some things that we need to do. But I would always I would always err on the side of bend don't break with talented players and play base defense. But if you can't play base defense, you got to do something else. So it's also field position, Jack. We're bend don't break. If you got the ball on your own end, as you approach the 50, we get a little more aggressive. As you cross midfield, we get even more aggressive. So field position, down and distance, things like that kind of dictate. But philosophy wise, um, I would say that we've been year to year a little bit more aggressive than bend don't break just because of talent. But I think talent dictates what you do. When you practice coverages in a normal week practice, how do you do 7-on-7? Yeah, we do 7-on-7 versus scout, not as much as maybe other people do because I think run game is more important. We do more 11-on-11 than we do 7-on-7, but we do some skeleton and some 7-on-7. Um, your coverage is really, in my opinion, from a pass coverage standpoint, that's stuff that's got to be worked on in the off season in the summer. And when you get into the fall, I think you really need to work on run fits, supporting runs, understanding who's wearing runs because I still think high school football, at least in my opinion, of how long I've been doing it and where I coach it, high school football is still about running the ball and stopping the run. And um, a lot of teams, at least to me, they don't throw the ball effectively enough. They don't throw it with good enough to beat you down in and down out. If they do, then you need to work more on coverage. But when we talk about coverage, and this is another pet peeve of mine that upsets me sometimes, is when guys talk coverage all the time, they always want to talk about whether the pattern match or the rip liz match or the quarter half and all the rules and all that. But I think the most important thing in coverage you better realize is how you support runs and how you fit runs based on the front that you're trying to play and the coverage that you're trying to play. Because in high school football, you're going to see runs way more often than you're going to see static every down passes. So coverages need to fit runs, in my opinion. Do we blitz a lot out of quarters, Coach Moses? My answer is going to be no. Simply because when we blitz, we do not play quarters coverage behind it. As soon as we send a fifth, we go to man free or 3 under 3 deep, sometimes 4 under 2 deep trap coverages. So as soon as we send a fifth, we're going to go to some type of man free or uh, zone blitz coverage. As soon as we send six, we're going to go to some type of 2 under 3 deep hot pressure or zero coverage or peel coverage. So as far as do we blitz within our quarters package, my answer is no. I am a quarters-based team. I've been my entire defensive career. I've been a quarters-based team. So when we blitz, we go to other coverages, but we are 100% a quarters team and a quarters-based team. But when we blitz, we do other things. So I hope that answers your question. We don't play a lot of quarters behind our blitzes. 7 boxes is 2 high safeties, 7 diamond is single high safety. We'd interpret your non-free safeties and ends. Yeah, David. I mean, obviously, 2 high and 1 high is going to change how you play your run support, and obviously, if you're 1 high, you're probably going to be your 7. To me, your 7 diamond in 1 high. Those guys, the outside guys, are going to be box players. Your 7 box with 2 high safeties, you can spill a little bit more because you have safeties to each side that are able to support. So the run support of that is a little bit more important in my opinion than the coverages. Yeah, Jason, 7 diamond is an interesting term because to me, 7 diamond is an old fashioned goal line term where you're playing a short yardage defense with um, with a real aggressive front, and then it could be a 4-3 look with the linebackers lined up in a diamond formation, or it could be a 7-man front. It could be anything, and that's the crazy thing with football is there is no true terminology, there is no true vocabulary. So 7 diamond is different to everybody. Uh, When you say DBs, Ryan, it's going to be different for corners than safeties. Our safeties, depending on where they are in the run fits, will get keys off of offensive linemen and a triangle reads from lineman to near back. Our corners almost never, for us, the way we play defense, our corners almost never read through the backfield. We read through receivers 90 to 95% of the time. I know there's some people that play cover 3 and some things where they might slow pedal out and read through the quick game of the quarterback. But the way we play defense with our pattern match coverage and a lot of our man principles, we don't read with our corners, but our safeties, more often than not, especially the down safeties and our 8-man front stuff, they are going to be reading linemen. Dallas Fort Worth in the house. Philosophy-wise, would you hear your questions in the field location? 15 to minus 13. No, I would say, Jason, our pressures are more um, field position first, and then down and distance second, and then how we pressure and the way we pressure and how we choose to pressure is all field position. So when we have teams backed up, it's going to be more zone pressure. Probably the further they are backed up, the more it's going to be 3 under 3 deep or 4 under 2 deep. As they progress out, maybe some 2 under 3 deep hot stuff. As they get close to the midfield, maybe we'll play some man-free stuff. But we pressure on field position more than down and distance. Now, the types of pressures that I send, based on field position. I will dictate the types of pressures that I send on down and distance because there may be some pressures that I like more versus run game or field pressures or run schemes with certain coverages behind it. But we always, the coverages that we play and how aggressively or how conservatively we blitz is based on field position first. All right, Rocco, we carry all of them. We carry cloud, we carry sky, we carry trap into the boundary. Obviously, you can get more aggressive and play more cover two theories and more trap theories because you can support the run with that corner a little bit better than you can in the middle of the field. Middle of the field, you start to get into some run support issues. And again, not to be redundant, not to repeat myself, but I am a big run fit, run support guy in high school football, and I think you need to. I think 7-on-7 and all these 7-on-7 leagues and tournaments and summer stuff. I think that's all beautiful. I think it's all great for skill, development. But at the end of the day, you're not going to play the game 7-on-7 when the pads come on. 95% of the time, and I coach in Florida, which is quite arguably the greatest talent area in the country outside of maybe Texas and California. And Florida's probably as big of a hotbed of football as you can imagine. And people still run the ball 80 to 85% of the time down here. So when I'm thinking coverages, I'm thinking run fits. And if my safeties are down playing an 8-man box, we are going to fit and key offensive linemen. Let me go back, Jason. Call not here, basically. You're going to have to reiterate that, Jason. I'm a little bit confused based on your other one, what you're saying. Coach Gardner, how you doing, bud? We got a new grill, and I have grilled out 3 times in the last couple days. I'm not as good as you. I've only done hamburgers and steaks, but I would love you to send me some recipes and some other things that I can do to grill. I want to get better at grilling, obviously in Florida, where I am on my back porch. There's Mia again. I want to get better at grilling. I just don't trust myself to ruin something, to go out and spend money and ruin something. But I need some new recipes. I want to try and grill some tilapia or maybe some salmon or maybe some fish on the grill. Salmon. Mia wants salmon, so we're gonna try and grill. I want to grill some fish, but I always see people grilling it in aluminum foil and doing different things. So I need to get a little bit better. But I'm trying to step up my game, Coach Gardner, and get into the grilling world. Changes from year to year, Daniel. We're a 3-3 team, so I try to study 3-3 teams if I can. Obviously, it was West Virginia back in the day. NC State with the same defense coordinator from West Virginia is doing it now. San Diego State with Rocky Long had done it for a while, but it changes from year to year depending on what we're doing. The back end, we are a 5 DB, 3 safety kind of nickel structure. So anybody that plays any type of pattern match or any type of split field, we can study any of them. The biggest thing in studying defenses to me is trying to study what we can actually do. Studying things just to get smarter yourself doesn't do you a lot of good if you can't actually coach them. Yeah, Brazilian barbecue probably would blow my mind. Karoga, I don't want to butcher your name, but I don't think I'm good enough, smart enough, or anywhere near talented enough to do Brazilian barbecue. Coach Gardner, you barbecue pizza. If you put pizza on a grill, Coach Gardner, and you tell me how, I will 100% do it. Coming from Long Island and New York, we want to grill any type of pizza we could grill. We would love to do it. Pizza. I did put a pic on. I don't know if I put it on Twitter or Instagram, but I put a pic the other day of me grilling steaks that were marinated and everything else. So I think if you follow, I know you do, Coach Gardner. That's how we're buddies. But I did 100% put a pic of me grilling steaks on Twitter the other day. She got 2 removed wide receivers to the field. They were spaced far apart. Would your safety have the ability to check out a 2 read? We would go to quarters if they're split. If they're that to the field, if they're that far apart at 1 and 2, and we don't feel like the safety can get to number 1 based on our 2-read rules, we would check quarters. But that's a great question, Ryan, and something you need to carry in your toolbox. So we would have the 2 removed, 2-read or palms would be our base check. But if they got so far removed that our safety didn't feel like he could get to 1 if 2 went to the flat, then we would 100% check quarters. Based on Chris Donovan, based on the blocking scheme, they're very rarely box players. That would depend on the coverage that we're in, and maybe the pressure that we're in. They're very rarely box players. They're more often not they're going to be spill players, but whether or not they're whether or not they're B gap players or C gap players changes, and whether or not they're dive or quarterback players and options changes. But I would say by rule, our stack backers are spill players probably 90% of the time. Need to grill some salmito al trapo. Is a kind of salt crust tenderloin. That's good, easy stuff. That's way out of my league, Daniel. That now you're talking about like blitzes and coverages in a barbecue grill game that I really don't understand. But
he makes good burgers.
But salmito al trapo, I'll try that. I'll try anything you guys ask. Rocco, to me, quarters and robber are not the same. And this comes down to a terminology type deal. But to me, robber coverage that Virginia Tech was playing back in the day with Bud Foster, or what everybody, in my opinion, thinks is robber coverage has different rules than quarters. I have different rules of how I was taught quarters coverage than robber. How you play the wheel, how you play number 2, in my opinion, gets a little bit different. Quarters coverage gives you the ability to double team number 1 based on the release of number 2. Robbers coverage, in my opinion, based on what I've studied from Virginia Tech, Bud Foster, and the people that talk about robber. Robber loses a little bit of the double team because sometimes the reconnecting coverage is unstable. Reconnecting. Are we back in? Sorry if I lost you guys. Yeah.
Stop.
Yeah. My robber coverage is 1 rat brown, however you guys want to call it in Saban terminology, and that's because when I learned it from Joe Delgaze on Long Island 25 years ago, it was from Nebraska. Nebraska called it 11 robber because it was a robber concept for the safeties, but it was a one high, 1 low, 1 rat brown type of man-free deal in a way, depending on how it spun and what the safeties read and run or pass. But so my robber is completely different than everybody else's. But robber in general and quarters in general, to me, are 2 different coverages. Similar in nature with what the safety's doing, but different on how you handle 2 to the flat. That's the big deal. No, our prevent defense is not built into our base palms coverage. Our prevent defense would be a completely different scenario, covering different scenarios in a completely different coverage. So no, my prevent my prevent and my base in palms are nowhere near the same, Coach O'Malley. Karoga, the away backer that's walked out, if he's a B gap player, you got to be careful how far you remove him. And then depending on the splits and what you're trying to do with that guy, if you have to remove him too far, then you need to put the end, or you need to stunt or move the end into that B gap so that the linebacker is a C gap player if he's removed that far. And then in the middle of the field, when you get into issues, you might have to play some man back there. That's always going to be the number 1 issue in split field coverage and palms and stuff, is when it's 2x2 in the middle of the field and the away side, when you remove that guy, he's a B gap run defender, but he's removed. So sometimes you got to do some other things to alleviate his B gap fit and help him in coverage. Thank you, Jason. I'm sorry. I wanted to make sure that I answered your question with the typo. I know that you corrected the typo, but I just wanted to make sure that I answered. Thank you, David. Boomer Sooner, thumbs up, love it. Trev Alberts is the man, Nebraska. Great football player, pretty good ESPN commentator, whatever you want to call him now. But Trev Alberts is a good dude. Yeah,
Can
baby.
I use the plug? Mine's dead, and I have to do
What are you plugging into your computer?
Yeah.
Is it the same plug? You better check and make sure it's the same plug. Sorry, guys.
No, it's not this. I need to plug it into.
Yeah. Who was? Wait a minute. I got to go back. Who's Rocco? Coach O'Malley, I'm confused. Who is Rocco? Trap coverage for us is a deal where
Hey, Rocco the stalker.
Trap coverage is a deal where for us that Rocco. My bad. Been a long couple of weeks. So, Coach O'Malley, you coach Rocco Tenebruso, who I believe now Rocco is upstate New York somewhere, Rocco, if I'm right. Chris, getting back to your coverage question with trap, what we try to do is we try to make it look like palms as best we can when we go to trap, because that's one of the disguises we like to use. So we like to hold our palms look as long as we can, and then we jump the corner aggressively inside to the flat, and obviously D-gap run when we're playing trap coverage. That's the way we do it, because we play so much palms and quarters that we want to make it look similar. And even though our quarters coverage will look a little bit different because the corner is so much of a man player, but we try to make our trap look similar to our palms coverage. Guys, give me 1 second. Stay with me. I'll be back. Run the chat, man.
Okay. Let's see. Let's see. Hi, Rocco. Let's see. Really? My cat wants out. My dad, he's yes, he is a great guy. He's not that strict. He's very, very he doesn't care about anything. Well, except for sometimes. But he's very, very nice. At the moment, he's my favorite parent. But I like them both, but I had to answer some questions, and now I am out.
You answered the questions?
No, that question.
Sorry, guys. Forgive me.
They were asking me questions.
All right. Rocco is at Long Beach. Great guy. Great coach. Oh, shoot. Long Beach. I could tell you guys a lot of stories about Long Beach, not only playing them, but about where I hung out. I hung out at the Inn for I don't know how long in my life. Every summer, Long Beach is a great summer place to be. What's it like having your dad rep? Oh, Mia, yeah. That's my girl right there. My older daughter is in 7th grade, and she's third night in a row that she's doing a sleepover somewhere else. So my youngest one is pretty much mine. My oldest one is pretty much my wife's. All right, the difference between quarters and Robert, your comment is to the flattened quarters, the end strong safety carry and Robert. Yeah, Karoga. As far as I'm concerned, with how people talk about that, For us, our outside linebacker, strong safety would in quarters would carry the wheel of two to the flat, so that our free safety, when two goes to the flat, can double the number one receiver. Some other people that play the corner in robber coverage, they play the corner on the wheel, and in my opinion, you lose the ability to double the number one receiver, which is one of the things um, that quarters coverage was kind of based upon. It was an NFL type deal, and um, also a college type deal based on option football and playing two vertical off of play action passes. But it really became prevalent in the NFL because with all the good back in the day when it was 21 personnel, all the good Z receivers, you could play quarters coverage, get a ninth guy in the box. Your free safety could uh, fit runs based off of how they were blocking things. He could play two vertical, but if two went somewhere else to the flat or under, like drive concepts, shallow concepts, curl flat concepts, other things, your free safety could then double the number one receiver. And that's the biggest difference between robber and quarters. Jack, I would say that in the Big 12, the way they recruit is a little bit different. The style of play, obviously, when everybody is high tempo, you know, if you're dealing with all high tempo teams that are going to get more possessions and you know they're snapping the ball every 15 seconds, your defensive goals, your defensive mindset is going to change a little bit simply because the other team's going to have the ball more. The other team's going to get more possession. So your points per game and things like that, and your goal sheets change as a defense. You know, I think they've all kind of they're all doing everything they can to stay relevant in the Big 12 and stay relevant to competing. Uh, and I think they now have to recruit based upon what they see is the norm. I think a lot of those schools, unfortunately, outside of maybe Oklahoma, Texas, I know there's a lot of great schools in the Big 12. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think they're quote unquote blue bloods. So when you look at the Iowa States or the Kansas States or some of the teams that have gotten better, the TCU's, they're still not blue bloods, so they're not getting 5 stars. So they have to do things a little bit differently defensively. So unfortunately, I think the style of play, the offenses they play, and the kids that they can recruit affect their defense. Yeah, Jack, my friend, I don't know if it's Northern Michigan or not. I can't tell you, but a friend of mine played for the Detroit Lions. I've said that before on this thread. I've been to Detroit and I've been to Battle Creek. Only two places in Michigan that I've been. Cover four, Zach. To me, again, I said this earlier in the video, but I'll reiterate because you joined late. Cover four and quarters are not the same thing. Cover four, if it's something where you're just playing four DBs in quarters, one quarter of the field across the back end, that is not quarters coverage. Quarters coverage is about getting a ninth guy in the box. It's about playing man on a number one, except shallow cross. It's about double teaming number one based on a release number two. So cover four and quarters are not the same to me. Yeah, it's been a while since the Big 12, but Boomer, I would guarantee you that if you go back to when you've seen really good defenses in the Big 12, I would guarantee you that offenses were different, and maybe it was more pro-eye 21 personnel option based way back in the day than it is now. So I think that's why defenses have changed it also. Zach, if you mean Meg Man everywhere he goes, then that's talking about a corner play in quarters or robber or where he's going to just man that guy up everywhere he goes. He's not worried about shallows. He's not worried about anything else. He's man on that player everywhere he goes. Yeah, your Mike Karoga, your Mike has to push with the number three. You got to understand if two goes to the flat and runs wheel, um, there's really not too many other people that can go into flat. Number one can maybe run if two's going to run wheel, I don't know what one's going to run, but the concern would be the running back pushing out to the flat, and you've got to be able to teach quarters coverage and understand how to push the Mike linebacker through three to the flat. It's something that you got to work on. Rip Liz match cover three. It's something that you got to work on. So two wheel, three to the flat is an issue in a lot of coverages. I'm always Daniel. I'm always looking for fronts, coverages, blitzes, personnel. Um, Personnel is the first thing I look at. Where are they strong? Where are they weak? Where can we attack? Then I go to fronts, even or odd. Then I go to boxes, one high, two high, 8-man fronts, 7-man fronts. What can we RPO? Then I go to coverages and pressures. Yeah, that was a long. Kolakowski was a long time ago. Split field coverage teams usually run half field coverage periods in practice more time. Yeah, we do half line drills all the time. I have a video on my YouTube channel on half line drills and how we teach half line drills. It's a way better way to get more reps. And the biggest thing with half line drills though is you got to figure out once you get all your base coverages in. If you're a palms or a two read or a quarters team like we are, um, when you go to half line, you got to change those coverages up and you got to get enough reps playing two reader palms. Then you got to switch and play quarters. Then you got to switch and play man free or three deep, whatever you're doing. You just got to make sure you rotate all of your coverages versus half line so you guys can play them all. Yeah, more under center, more 21, more downhill run. Um, the game was different back then, and it lent. Here's the thing I can tell you, Boomer. It lent itself to more defensive statistics, even though the defenses might not have been as good because the offenses weren't as explosive. So I think the thing you got to look at now is, are the defenses really that bad, or are the offenses with the talent, tempo, spread, space, tackling issues, are the offenses just doing a better job exploiting weaknesses in the defense than teams used to? And again, your goal sheets, you think everything you're doing on defense has to change when you're playing spread tempo teams because they're going to get more snaps, they're going to get more plays, they're going to get more possessions. So, to say that you're going to hold a team to a certain amount of points nowadays is it's not realistic anymore because if a team gets more percentages, or I'm sorry, if a team gets more possessions, they have a chance to score more points, but the percentages of points that they score per possession, are probably the same. So easiest way I can say that is like, let's say back in the day, if a team had uh, 8 possessions and you tried to hold them to a certain percentage, and that percentage was 21 points or less. So if a team had eight possessions and you wanted to hold them to only scoring points on uh, less than 30% or whatever the possessions may be, that's going to lend itself to being 17 points or lower. If nowadays, if a team is going to get 12 possessions and you keep the same defensive, um, goals and things that you want to do, if a team has 12 per possessions and your goal chart is the same, that you say they're only going to score X amount of points, well, percentage wise, if a team had 8 possessions and they scored 60% of the time and they have 12 possessions and they scored 60% of the time, they're going to score more points with the 12 possessions. So I think that's a big thing that you have to look at. Points per possession, to make it a really simple conversation, that is more important than points in general. Iowa State runs a very interesting defense. Smart how they Big 12 innovative. Yeah, they just went to a 3 safety deal like a lot of other teams did. They improvised with the 3-4, 3-3 personnel just to get better athletes on the field and handle spread a little bit better. But they're actually a lot of split field principles and a lot of the same base coverage principles. They just use an extra safety as a Mike linebacker, and he's a heavy run player. And then in the pass game, he drops down and becomes the Mike linebacker. So their 3 shell becomes a 2 shell real quick, um, based on how they rotate their safeties, especially number 12, Ihorn, I think was his name. Number 12 is a really aggressive player. He's a run player. He's a down guy, even though he lines up at linebacker, at safety. I'm sorry. Number 12 for Iowa State is more of a linebacker than he ever was. At least not this past season, the season before that. I think he was hurt this season, but he's more of a linebacker than a safety. Um, All right, so let's go back to Coach O'Malley. Coaching points for your safety versus two attached. If it's two attached and we're playing quarters, he's going to read that number two attached. That number two is involved in a run game, putting his hands on anybody. Like when we were a 4-2-5 team, we would play with a 7 technique, which to me is an inside eye of the tight end technique. That free safety would read through the tight end. If he puts his hands on the 7, we're getting involved in a run fit, and we're getting involved right now. Run at us, we're going to fit between the Mike and the strong safety. Run away, we're going to be a cutback player based on how fast the Mike is playing to run away. For us, it was a little bit different when we were not different, but a little bit easier when we were a 4-2-5 team, because if you play with a 7 that's inside eye to tight end, that tight end really has to declare what he's doing real quickly. But if it's a tight end attached, Coach O'Malley, to make it real simple, our free safety in quarters is always going to read that number 2 tight end attached. A 7-man front would be, for me, would be goal line, short yardage. I don't know why you would play it in any other scenario other than personnel. If a team is a double tight, double wing, or whatever they may be, there's still some room for 7-man front. But for us, it would be more of a goal line scenario. Mel Tucker is a great coach. It all comes down to the talent that they can get. Can the talent that they can recruit play the schemes that he wants to play? How easily can he adjust to what they need to do? I live in Jacksonville. Mel Tucker was the DC for the Jaguars for a little bit, so I am a Mel Tucker fan. We are, for me, Rocco, we're not crazy multiple with our odd front. We are a 3-3 stack team. We're a tight front team. We're a bare front team. And then when we move or slant and angle, we get to over under. But we don't line up in over under. We slant or we move to it. So I would think we're not real exotic with our fronts. Karoga, if the other team is better than you in all aspects, it doesn't matter if they are spread tempo or if they are under center, they're going to score points. They're going to score points at will. Obviously, the way they play, snapping the football, leaving more time on the clock, more possessions means they might score more. My advice to you would be, if the other team is spread and that much better than you, then you better slow it down on offense, because defensively it's really not going to matter. Boomer, I don't know if I can talk to you about changing 7-man front looks, because I don't know how many variances you can get in a 7-man front. So I don't know if I can answer that. 2 non-Power 5 conferences really brought out 4-2-5 and 3-3-5. Magnum West. Stop trying. Yeah, I mean, I think it has a little bit to do with that, David, but I think it has to do with personnel. You got to understand that defensive linemen are very hard to come by. 300-pound guys or defensive ends that can rush the passer, or your true 1 technique, 3 technique, or your true 300-pound 2-gap nose guard. They're hard to come by. So I think that the non-Power 5 schools understand that the best D linemen in the country, athletically and size-wise, are going to go to the blue bloods and the big timers. You're going to get the best of what's left. If you're an even front team, you probably need, in college at least, you need 8 D linemen to rotate, if not more than that. So it's hard to find 8 D linemen. As soon as you start going odd 3-3 or 3-4, less D linemen to recruit. I think there's more high school players that can be backers or outside backers. So I think it was kind of the style of play Charlie Batch back in the day. And speaking of Detroit Lions, Charlie Batch back in the day and some other guys, obviously. But I honestly think they play the defense. They play more for recruiting. I think Coach D'Antonio is an old school guy. He took all the hits for everything they did. Wouldn't fire his offensive staff, probably because he's a loyal old school guy and live by the sword, die by the sword. And I think there's a lot of other things going on in Michigan State and a lot of other things that lead to the stress and the duress and why he would back out now. He's still, in my opinion, when you watch him coach and look at him coach, he's very healthy. He looks great. Always more behind the scenes going on with things that you don't know, with violations, recruiting, other big scandals at Michigan State, through, I believe, the Olympics and other things. So it's just a shame. He's a great guy. He's a great coach, and would have loved to see him in it longer. But you know what? As much as you might, if you're a Michigan State fan and you want to say that you're a little bit upset that he didn't fire the offensive staff as a football coach for 22 years, I give him all the props and all the credit in the world. He fell on his sword. He was a head coach. He's ultimately to blame, and he took the hit for a lot of that, and he left a lot of his offensive guys the same. And those guys have families and jobs, and I think D'Antonio did a good job adhering to that and not just making decisions based on winning games. So, you may not be happy with him all the time based on results, but I think you need to be happy that you had a great man and a great role model running your program. Yeah, MSU was always, even going back to the Les Miles and Nick Saban days, MSU was always a mid tier team. They were never a great team. They had years, obviously, where they were good and years where they could beat Michigan or Ohio State every once in a while, but they never ever truly competed year in and year out. Les Miles and Nick Saban obviously um, got them in that position a little bit more. But look what happened to Les Miles and Nick Saban. They bolted for the SEC and other jobs. So that lets you know that Michigan State back in the day was always a catapult job, and it was not a build the roots, stay the rest of your life job. It was always a springboard job. So when you just look at what happened at those places and how it happened, and the guys that left and went on to do greater things, they left for a reason. So there's a reason Michigan State is what it is, and Les Miles and Nick Saban could probably talk more about that, but it's probably limited with recruiting base, who you can recruit, pedigree, the types of kids you can get, facilities. So still a great place though. So all right, guys, we're going on a little bit over an hour. I'm going to take about maybe 10 minutes more, 9 minutes more, finish it up. A little bit later than we're normally on, and I'm outside on my porch. Um, and there's my daughter at 10 o'clock at night who's still up. So obviously,
I still haven't finished my school.
yeah, you need to finish your schoolwork because parenting wise, I'm probably a failure. Quarter, half. Do you play half to the trips at times? No. At times, yes, we play versions of half coverage to the trips, but that's a kicked or a clouded corner coverage. So, yes, in theory, it's half to the trips and then a backside safety playing three verticals. So, to answer your question, MIA, yes, we do play that, but it's cover two in a way, but it's a little bit abbreviated. But I would say to the trip side, to the 1 and 2 receiver, yes, you could argue that we play half defense. Yeah. Obviously, I think Jack. The thing you got to consider though is a lot of the hype going in with the talent and things that they may have had is all things that D'Antonio built because back in the day and going back 20, 30 years ago, there wasn't a lot of hype with Michigan State simply because in that conference with all the other blue bloods, they couldn't compete. And the fact that there was hype about Michigan State is just more credit to D'Antonio, in my opinion. Rocco, when we close the middle, we go man free almost 90 to 95% of the time. When we close the middle, we go man free. I don't like closing the middle. We play some three deep stuff, but it's spot drop, country cover three. It's not pattern match. We don't. We have so much to do teaching our quarters and our quarter half pattern match that I don't like teaching three deep pattern match. So when we close the middle of the field, it's going to be man or man free 90% of the time. We have to have exotic checks. We don't spend a lot of time, Dan, on exotics simply because when you go back and you research the percentages of those formations, how often you get them, you end up spending too much time on exotics and you don't really get them as much as you think. And then when you do get exotics, the plays that the offense can run are so limited. So we have exotic checks to answer your question, and we have to work on those in a game plan. Yes. Depends on where we are. MIA. I'm a big blitz guy. I'm a big man free zero guy. But depending on where we are, we have some zone pressure stuff that we like. But I'm if preference for me, we get backed up. I'm sending as many as I can and playing man. Yes, Jack. We will get back on the field. Thanks for your questions. Yeah, I don't even. I mean, Izzo's a great coach. He's done a lot of great things, but basketball school is questionable based on the landscape of the rest of the country. But at MSU right now, it might be a little bit better at basketball than it is at football. But D'Antonio did some things to get him. Yeah, Izzo's good. Izzo's a great coach. Can't argue with what he's done. Um, I think when you start talking about that, though, what I'm going to say is I'm going to tell you that you need less players to make a great basketball team. You don't have to recruit as many great players. You get one or two, and then you get some role players around that. Football is just such a different beast. Building a football team, building a football program with how many guys you need, and blue bloods are blue bloods. So Michigan, Ohio State, Notre Dame, a lot of the schools in that area are going to get the best talent. And Michigan State's been doing a hell of a job. I would think, in my opinion, I'm just going to give you my opinion personally. Dan Antonio and Gary Patterson at TCU, they do the most with the least. They do the best of getting a program into the spotlight with the least amount of 4 or 5 star players. In my opinion, I think D'Antonio and Patterson are as good as it gets. So I can't get involved in those. I can't get involved in those Izzo basketball conversations. I'm a Big East guy growing up. I went to St. John's University. Went to St. John's University a couple of years after Mullen and Bill Wennington and Shelton Jones and Willie Glass, and lost to Patrick Ewing in the Final Four. And then I think Villanova might have won it that year with Pinckney and them. I don't know. But back in the day when the Final Four was 3 Big East teams, and basketball was a little bit different landscape. So I can't speak on. I know obviously recently Izzo and everything they've done, but I'm a Luke Carnesecca, Big East guy, Rolly Massimino, old school, Jim Calhoun, Big East guy. Thank you, Rocco. I appreciate it. Thank you to you guys that tune in. Without you guys, I'd have nothing. So, all right, guys, I appreciate everything you've done tonight. I appreciate you guys tuning in. I appreciate the comments. I appreciate the questions. Did St. John's play the Butler University Arnold Nickens teams during your time? No. Maybe maybe out of conference here or there, but I believe in my time there, early 90s, 90, 91, 92, 93, I don't think Butler was part of the conference or part of what we were doing. So it was more just traditional Big East matchups. Uh, Here's the biggest influence I could tell you, MIA, about Jimmy Johnson 4-3 was the speed on the field. They started playing way more speed on the field than everybody else. So they were playing some defensive ends that might have been outside linebackers, some linebackers that might have been safeties. So I think, if anything, the Jimmy Johnson 4-3 was a little bit. I think where he was ahead of the curve was hybrid defense wise, playing kids in positions that maybe everybody else didn't see them in. So playing some outside linebackers at the end and then playing some safeties at linebacker, I would think that's Jimmy Johnson's biggest contribution. You guys stay safe. Everybody else, have a great evening. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your families. Take care of your kids and your program. And football will be back. Everybody stay patient. Don't rush to get it back. I will see you guys next time. As always, you won't play well until you play fast. I'll catch you guys next week.